Hey everybody, and welcome back to the Carpio Corner podcast. I'm Gloria.
And I'm Chris.
And we have an episode today that is going to be kind of an interview with Chris. I've seen a lot of podcast episodes where couples do that. They kind of ask each other questions. So I thought it would be fun. So if you want to hear Chris answer a few questions, stick around. All right, so let's jump into this, as you would say. It's very interesting being the interviewer.
Yeah.
But we're going to give it a go.
Yeah.
So what's kind of been going on in your life lately? Give us a little synopsis, introduction of what's been happening.
Like the last day or like the last week? Or
last week.
What happened in the last week?
2 weeks.
Well, last week we started, we had our first coffee event as a coffee roasting business, which was like a really big deal. It was like a big lead up to that. Lot of roasting, standing in front of the roaster, pouring a bunch of beans in. I mean, I think we have over 100 pounds
beans
of coffee roasted, probably more than 100 pounds. Actually, no, definitely more than 100 pounds, probably a couple 100 pounds of coffee roasted. So that took like a lot of time. And I had to
prepping.
Yeah. I had to write like 3 different sermons. Well, I had to write one that's for today. I had to prep another one or finalize another one that's for this Sunday. And then I had to prep another one for 2 weeks from now, which I haven't finished that one yet. But
wow. The life of a pastor.
Yeah. So it was like a lot of writing. Yeah. It's like basically like writing 3 essays, Yeah. In like 1 week, which it's not terrible because it's not like they're like 1,800 word essays, which isn't bad. But just a lot of research and
it sounds like a lot.
Studying and stuff like
words.
That. Yeah. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. Also, I'm starting to write a lot more, which is like weird because like I go through like these seasons where like I almost can't meet my 1,800 word like minimum that I like to have. And then there's other seasons where I'm writing like 2,300 words and like or more. And I'm like, I don't really know. Maybe it's just the content that I'm covering, like the passage that I'm going over at the time or something. I
feel like
that.
I'd rather cut down than, write more.
Yeah, because at 1,800 words, I'm like 25 minutes speaking. At 2,300, I'm like pushing a half hour or more. Yeah. Like tonight, it's so like 2,300.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Cool.
But I try and stay in that sweet spot, that half hour spot.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's kind of what I've been doing this last week. That's what's been going on.
Do you ever feel like half hour is not enough time to say what you want to?
I feel like if there was something that I needed to say, I should have said it in that half hour. Half hour is a long time. Yeah.
Do you think attention spans kind of fall anyways?
Depends how,
like a half hour?
Depends how well you're preaching, Like, I feel like I've preached for like 35 minutes and the usual is like 25 or less. And I'm like, oh man, like, I'm sorry, you must have felt that go on for a while. And people, they're either being polite and lying or they're being honest, and saying like, oh, it didn't actually feel any longer,
Yeah.
So it kind of depends like where you're at. But sometimes I feel bored when I'm communicating because I'm starting to say the same thing, and I'm like, okay, I've said this already. Like I've got to wrap up, and that really only happens when I go off my manuscript, because everything in my manuscript doesn't repeat unless it's intentional. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, about the business, have you ever dreamed of opening a little business?
Yeah, I was actually talking with your dad about this when it was just him and I roasting while you were baking at the house. I was telling him how meaningful it is to me that we're doing this coffee roasting thing because like I've always had this like entrepreneurial heart where I'm like I want to make something, like I want to do something, like I want to start something, and I even when I was little, like I'm sure like I'm not alone in doing this. You even had your own version of this with like the bracelets, like the friendship bracelets and stuff. But like I had this like candy. I would buy bags of candy and I'd bring it to school and I'd try and like sell the candy to like everybody, like, cause you could get certain kinds of candy at the school store, but you couldn't get, like the candy you want, you know? So like I'd bring the candy that people want and I tried like selling that to kind of try and make like a profit, but like I definitely overpriced like all of the candy so I didn't really sell.
Wow.
I didn't really sell well.
Wow.
Yeah. I wasn't really good at it, honestly.
Yeah,
but I like doing it. Yeah.
You learn as you grow.
Yeah. And then later I tried to start like a t-shirt company and it was called Kohelet Apparel. I've worn the shirt actually a couple times here and that honestly could have gone somewhere. But I was starting working at the church. That was like the first time that I was working at Grace. And it was so much that I was learning in my first like year of ministry. And I also was trying to start this thing on the side and like not having any of the know-how of like, okay, well, you know, how do I register as a business and like all this stuff. Yeah. I was like, you know what? I can't do this well. And it's actually going to be a detriment to the ministry because I don't have the experience to be able to like balance these both yet. So I'm going to put that on the back burner. And
it's a lot to do. Something you feel like is on the side.
Yeah.
It's like that can take more time sometimes.
Yeah.
Than what's like your main job.
Yeah. But now like I've been doing this for 5 years. This is my 5th year being in pastoral ministry. And a lot of this stuff is like a lot more manageable to be able to do. Like before it would take me like a month to write a sermon, like a month to write one sermon. Now that time has shrunk a lot. So being able to have the capacity to complete all the responsibilities I have as a pastor, but still be able to pursue this family venture, you know, because it's me, you, and your dad doing the Ocasio roasters, is like a really cool thing. And we do this podcast. I mean, we do a lot. You know, it's kind of crazy, actually.
Yeah, a lot of passion projects and stuff.
Yeah, but it's fun. You know, I like doing it. It's like, as much as it is time consuming, it's also like life giving, you know, to be able to just sit down and create content. Like if we weren't doing this way, I'd be doing my own stuff, you know. So being able to do it with you is like, it's a gift. Yeah. Yeah. And that you want to do it. Yeah. 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 Not that you're forced to do it.
I'm not forced to be here. I promise.
I'll give you your $20 after.
Perfect. Starbucks. Anyways. So do you feel like in kind of this season of like all these things starting and, you know, writing sermons all the time and you feel like God is like speaking to your heart and mind or putting something on your heart? Anything specific kind of right now?
Yeah, I think it's definitely pursue growth. Like, excuse me. I think I definitely never want to be in the place where I feel like I'm being complacent or like I've made it, especially only being 27. You know, like I have so much more to learn and to grow. And I think that God is definitely pushing me to find mentors that can push me even further. I already have mentors in my life that are pushing me, but to find ones that have had a different trajectory like in life or a different path in life, and then being able to also glean wisdom from them is something that I feel like he's calling me to right now. So I'm trying to pray through like, who is that and how can I build a relationship with them and a connection with them, because it's not super easy to get like that kind of connection with pastors where you're like, hey, I would like an hour every week from you. Yeah. You know, like that's kind of like a big ask. But it's something that I'm kind of trying to actively pursue right now. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I would say that, that coming from God really just asking for more of me and being like, hey, I want you to have an ear to hear what it is that I have to say in this season of your life. Mm-hmm. And for you to do that, I want you to put aside like all these distractions and just open up, you know, some mental space. I was preaching the other day about, I don't think you were there. You were in Cleveland. Yeah. I was preaching about how we should consider our thoughts to be, I think our thought life to be like currency. So basically, like when you invest your thought life into something, you'll get a return on that investment. But what it goes into is a limited resource. Like your mind is a limited resource. So if I'm going and I'm watching TV or playing video games and that's like all I'm doing, then I'm investing in all those things, and those things are filling up my thought life, which then doesn't give room for what actually will like generate growth in my life, which is God, you know? So I'm not putting it into prayer or to reading scripture or to, you know, listening to other sermons from other pastors and like all these things. Like I should be doing those things. So that's what I've been doing more of, just trying to like step out of, let me just watch a random video about like what we did during dinner. We watched like the 5 worst families on YouTube or something like
random
that.
YouTube videos.
Which like you still, you know, you have
They're
like
not
a
bad,
yeah, you have like a lollipop here and there, you know, because it's like it's not that big a deal. But like before, it was really bad. Like where every chance that I got to sit down and like not do something, I was like scrolling on YouTube Shorts, or I was like in the shower listening to YouTube, or like it was basically just like YouTube. Everything.
It's like replacing other things, not necessarily just little things here and there.
Yeah. You know, so like now I was like listening to a sermon by Tim Mackey when I was, you know, taking a shower before coming out here, or like in my drive, like I'll either listen to worship music or I'll listen to a sermon, but like I don't want to just put like a random content thing on just to make noise. Like I actually, if I'm going to invest in something, the thing that I want out of it should actually give life to me, you know, but it's hard to do that. Like I'm so honest. Like every time I get in the car, I'm like, I just want to like listen to something kind of funny, you know?
Yeah.
And that's not like a bad thing, but like, I just don't think that's the season of life that I'm in right now. And overall, like if I think about my life as like a limited resource, which it is, then even though it could be funny just to drive and spend that time like listening to something like that, it's not really worth it. You know, like I'm never going to get that time back. And
like, what are you learning?
Yeah.
You know?
And like, was that short laugh maybe from like a crude joke or something, was that really worth it? Or was like that reflection on that proverb that actually challenged me in my marriage or in my family or, you know, in my ministry, was that worth it? And I know the answer, but it's still hard to like accept it sometimes.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I think it's still a good challenge.
Yeah.
Even for those listening.
Yeah.
What do you listen to other than us talk?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So my next is kind of just regarding like a topic that you've recently shared a desire to talk about, either with others or here. So the topic is fatherhood. And this can encapsulate like your experience with it growing up, how that affects your life now, and even into the future. So, I don't know, I guess we can kind of begin by explaining like what you think of when you hear the word fatherhood, and then just go from there. Yeah.
So I just want to say, for those who are listening, if you hear background noise by any chance, it's because we're recording this at the church and there's a missionary that's right next door. So there's some awesome ministry that's going on right now.
They're laughing, they're talking.
Yeah, and he's visiting. So it's like cool that that's even something that you're getting to kind of actually hear and know that like God's doing work even in the midst of this. Yeah, if you can. If you can't, then I just
know that it's happening.
know it's happening and they're laughing and having a really good time.
Yeah.
But yeah, when it comes to fatherhood, I would say that the reason I actually brought this up as like something I'm willing to talk about is because I think it's something a lot of people go through, but don't feel comfortable expressing like the depths of the wounds that they experience through their fathers. And I have had like the blessing to have been able to like process this as a child and then process it as an adult, and then be, by God's grace and Holy Spirit, cognizant of how it continually impacts me to this day, and how it may impact me in the future as like a dad too, because that's kind of what we were talking about. So, you know, you can kind of feel free to ask me any question about it. I don't know where you would want me to start on that.
I mean, I guess I kind of just wanted to know first, like, what fatherhood means to you, like what the weight kind of is that comes with that word, like whether it's a good weight, whether it's a certain person, or whether it's an experience, or just like the first things that kind of come to mind when you think of a father or fatherhood.
Yeah, it's kind of weird because I don't like to use the word dad. Like, I never call my stepdad dad. I call him my stepdad, you know, but it's not the same thing. I call him Steve. I don't call your dad dad, and I don't even call your mom. But I think parental words are like sensitive to me, because in my life, like I have pretty much disowned the idea of ever having a dad. Like, you know, I'm never going to have a dad. Like I have my biological dad, which for context, like, my biological dad left when I was 3, but then was like intermittently in my life. And then he officially moved away to Guatemala when I was a sophomore in high school, I think. And we've recently reconnected. And when I talk to him, I do call him dad. But because I don't call him Hector, like for the same reason that you don't call your dad John.
Yeah.
You know, like it's just like, that's like, cause he was intermittently in my life. Like I was still told to call him dad.
Yeah.
So it feels weird to call him Hector.
Yeah.
And it does feel kind of disrespectful. So yeah, but, I just don't like, the only person that I actually feel comfortable with having that father role in my life, like, is God. Beyond that, like, I don't really feel comfortable with, calling anybody dad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is that mainly because of like your experience with your biological dad growing up?
Yeah. It was pretty much just like a huge wound. Like, just like imagine like a crater, like in your heart. I had that hole for a really long time. And it took me a while to heal that wound, but there was this moment where I kind of realized that like no one could heal that wound outside of God. And this is probably like around middle school, where it was like learning I have this like huge void in my heart. And the way I would have described it back then is like I have like this almost eternal wound, and it can only be filled by an eternal God. Like my dad couldn't fix that wound. Even if we were to have reconciled and he were to have like shown me love, like that scarring is like still there. Like we can patch it, but the wound points to something like even greater, of an even greater need in myself, which I think is kind of like what my dad's absence did, was it helped me to recognize that God is like my true father, you know? And I think whether your parents are in your life or not, I think all of us have to come to this point where we don't try and put our parents in this godly role in our lives. And we just recognize that they're human, and that they're doing their best. Some of them, you know, some of them are really intending to do their best. And that God is the only one that's going to fulfill every need that our heart longs to be filled, you know?
Yeah. What other lessons have you like learned from only having God in that spot of being like the provider and the father in your life?
Yeah. Well, I learned that Proverbs is like an incredible book, because Proverbs is like, you know, it literally is like, son, you know, put these words like on your heart and like a graceland around your neck, you know, like it's written to, in the sense of like being almost written to a son. And the way that I read that was like God's words to me as his son. And having God in that really vital role of like a father. I think many young men, when they hear a father that they like regard with great respect and authority, when that dad says something, they're like, I do this because my dad said this. You know, I do this because this is what my dad said. I think of like Austin, Dakota's boyfriend, who you guys would know if you listen to the other episodes and stuff like that. But he talks about his dad like that. You know, he's like, oh yeah, like, you know, we were talking about Transformers, and he was like, I love Transformers because my dad loved Transformers, you know, like, and like, I love this because my dad loved this, and I love this because my dad loved this, and I do this because my dad did this, you know. And it's like, it's not like, sometimes people say that in like a negative context, like, oh, you know, I'm this way because my dad's this way, but it was all positive. And it's, you can tell like Austin has like a great love and respect for his like father. That was like the relationship I had with God. Like all the Proverbs that I read, I was like, this is incredible. Like this is treasure, you know, like I need to seek this out. I need to seek out this wisdom. And so I pursued it like really intently. And I also pursued men who pursued God, like in that way, in the sense that there were like certain like godly men, especially within the church, who I looked up to. And I think I would definitely at that point in my life was like blinded to the negative attributes that they had. I wasn't really paying attention to that. I was more like paying attention to what good things they were doing for the sake of God's kingdom. So like my youth pastor, or like the pastors at Grace, you know, or like Mr. Colabella, who was, you know, raising a godly family, and being able to see that that was possible, I think was really like a huge encouragement to me. Because if I hadn't seen that that was possible, I think it would have been hard for me to like accept the words of God and saying like, you know, well, if you do this, then this and that and this and this, and like, this is how, you know, you become like a godly man and stuff. And then to see, well, I don't see any examples of that. You know, it was like, I needed that like example in the world to be able to see the, just from my human mind, to be able to see like the reality of God's truth, you know?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, what are some ways maybe that as your experience with fatherhood in your life so far affects your life now, or even affects your thoughts about being a dad, God willing, in the future?
Yeah. God being my father now. Well, I think it definitely impacts me in the sense of not so much my fatherhood, because I'm not a dad, but just my manhood in terms of what I believe is worthy of pursuing, or how I should treat you, or my own integrity. You know, like the standard for me is still godly character. It's not manly character, you know, and that's what pushes me to apologize even when I don't want to apologize, is what pushes me to stand in integrity even when it'd be more convenient for me not to, you know. It's what pushes me to try my best to wake up early sometimes and be with him, and you know, it's what helps me to feel a sweet love, you know, when I'm like in his presence, in the same way that like a young boy would like sit on the lap of their father and be like, I love you, Dad, you know, like it's like that for me. And all of that changes the way that I act, you know. It, like, if I statistically, I should not be who I am, you know, like an absent father in a low income community. Like that's not, I shouldn't be where I am, but by like God's grace and his fatherhood of me, and putting the men that he put around me in my life, like it's continually helping me to be someone who wants to continue to honor him and wants to love you well. And then looking into the future, wants to be like a really good dad. I used to actually like idolize being a dad when I was younger, like when I was really young, like middle school, high school. Like it was kind of weird, but like I really wanted to be a dad, and like I couldn't wait to be a dad. And I think part of that was because I wanted to like prove that I could be more than my dad, you know. And I'd be like, oh well, you know, I won't make kids feel like abandoned, or I won't be a bad listener, you know, or I'll be there in like their most like crucial moments. And I think I felt that a little bit with our nephew, Wesley. Just like, even just thinking like the sentences that I just said about being there in like their most crucial moments, like when we were at the park with Wes, and I'm going to cry. When we were at the park with Wes and just like helping him climb up the ladder at like the jungle gym. Mm-hmm. Like, that's what I mean, you know, to have moments like that with my own child. Like that's what I want, you know? And, when I was younger, I still had that same passion, like that same drive and desire to like be that in the future. But like, I knew that's not where God had me. And I needed to be present and like just growing and being a godly man, not a godly father, you know, just like where I am right now. And I think that's still the case, you know, like I still have to continue to pursue where he has me, because I never know if I will be blessed to be a father. You know, I might just always be an uncle. And I'm honestly like content with whatever God like gives me, even though I do have like a strong desire to be a dad. But yeah, I think the love that God has shown me over the course of my life, it can't be really put into words, because of that love, I've even been able to reconcile with my dad. And like, because of his love, I'm able to call him and like talk with my dad, my biological dad, and just like be present for him, not expectant of him to be present for me, you know? Like, I'm like, hey, like, what's going on? How can I be praying for you? You know, I'm not like, Dad, do you love me? Like, Dad, you know, why weren't you there? Like, yeah. Dad, you know, like, and just throwing these things at his face. Like, I'm not, that none of that is even at the forefront of my mind. It's like, I just want this man to feel loved, because I think I see that he hasn't really experienced that love. And that was hard for him to be able to show others too, you know? So that plays like a whole big role in it too. Just like my dad not having a dad, you know, and being from a really bad background and not being brought up by the Lord the same way that I was brought up by the Lord. So yeah, I know that I'm only here because of God's grace, and continually only here because of God's grace, because I've made my own mistakes. And, you know, at any point that the Lord wants to, you know, say, hey, like, thanks for doing what you've done, but I need you to step aside now. It's his grace, you know, I can only submit to it. So.
Well, is there anything you'd want to tell people who might have had the same like experiences growing up as you, looking at fatherhood and God and his role in your life? Yeah,
I think everyone's path is different. You know, even my little sister has had a absent father, but that path is different too. For me, one of the most impactful things was praying through core memories. Well, a couple things, I guess, but like one of them was praying through core memories and praying that the Lord would reveal to me where he was during those times. So here's an example that has stuck with me since like forever. There was one time where I was at a soccer game playing soccer. I was like, you know, and just it was just like recreational soccer. And, my dad actually came to this game. And it was like really rare for my dad to come to anything because, like I said, he was in and out and never really had time for us. But he showed up at this game and my heart like lit up and it was like, oh, this huge, like really big moment. And I was running down like the line. I had the ball. I was like sprinting so fast. I was like, gotta show off for my dad. Like, you know, like I wanted to be proud of me. And then I look over and he's walking away. He's like walking back to his car. And I just remember being like, totally defeated. Like my heart was like basically ripped out of my chest. And I'm praying through this moment with a counselor. She's like praying with me and she's like, where do you see, you know, do you see the Lord there? And I was like, yeah, like I see Jesus like with me, like there. And, you know, think whatever you kind of want about that in regards to seeing Jesus and stuff. But I think what the Holy Spirit was giving me the gift of is just reminding me like, hey, even there, he might not have been there, but I was there. And even though your heart was broken, I was alongside you in your brokenness, you know? And that was really healing for me, because it was just me coming to understand that there is never a time where the Lord is not with me. You know, like Jesus says, I'm with you to the end of the age. And that's just the kind of thing that I like hold on to, is the fact that he's gifted us his Holy Spirit, and he's with us like always. So he never abandons us. And I think that's kind of like a big thing for me, is like my abandonment wounds and stuff. Another thing that I can't remember what I was going to say. The second thing was, it had to do with, I can't remember what it was. It was like one really impactful thing. The second thing was, I chose, so remember how I said everyone processes things differently? I chose growth. Some people choose destruction. Both of these are reactions to trauma. So when my dad left and like did all those things, or his in and out, like that was causing trauma within my life. One of my sisters chose destruction. She went down a really dark road and just kind of like lost herself and ran from God and struggled with her relationship with God, you know, and everything like that. I chose growth, and I said, I'm leaning into this. I want more of Jesus. I want more of God, and everything like that. Me thinking that because I was choosing growth, I wasn't choosing destruction. In reality, I was still choosing destruction, even like amidst my growth. So it wasn't until college, when I was going through counseling again, that I realized that I had a lot of pain and darkness in my life because of the absence of my father that I had not addressed, and had created really detrimental characteristics within myself that I needed to address, and I needed to be able to like overcome. So if you have experienced this yourself, try and identify which one you're in. Are you in the path that's like choosing to run, or are you in the path that's choosing to run by growing? And if you're in either one, try and see the opposite side. You know, like if you're choosing to run and destroy yourself, what is the alternative? You know, like what could you be choosing to grow in? What could you be choosing to, you know, nurture within your life? If you're in the running by growing, think about who are you leaving in your wake? Because you could be choosing growth, but you could be destroying people along the way, thinking that you're becoming this great guy, you know, or girl, whoever it is.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
I would say.
Thanks for sharing all that.
Yeah. Thanks for asking those questions.
Yeah.
Good questions.
Yeah.
Cool.
So, how does it feel having just been interviewed?
I think you did a great job, babe.
Oh, thanks. But how do you feel?
I feel good. Yeah.
Cool.
I always love talking about it. I do. Because it like brings up, it just reminds me of God's faithfulness, you know? And I think that's important for me to remember, because it's like a testimony, you know? And I think it's important for other people to hear, because like I'm not alone. Like literally, one, the divorce rate in America is like super high. And two, it doesn't even matter if your parents are divorced. You could be living in a home with an absent father and still experience these things. And that's not even touching on like mother wounds, you know, which I don't really have like a lot of those, because my mom was like super great, but my sisters might, you know, because they had a different experience than I did. And I think that that's just things people should be able to process and vocalize, so that other people can know they're not by themselves.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I guess we can do a really fast deep end.
Well, you got to sing.
I know. I do have to sing.
Yeah.
And I'm 5 minutes late.
Yeah. So that's okay. We can close out.
But I want to do a really quick
Okay.
Okay. I just want to say that Taylor Swift is literally taking over the world. And I want a little bit of the male perspective. Do you think this is happening as well?
I think that it is happening.
You do think it's happening?
I think Taylor Swift is taking over the world.
That just confirms.
Yeah. I mean, it's everywhere.
I'm not even on the internet. Football world.
I'm not even on the internet anymore.
The AMC movie world.
Yeah.
Everything.
I know. Social media. Like she's taking like, she's literally gone from being like, oh, I'm going to do a tour where I travel the world, to, oh, I'm going to just be in every AMC movie theater and everyone's
and
going to come
sell my tickets at exactly the amount I want. Did you know that?
What? Really?
She sold them at $19.89, 1989, which is her album coming out next week.
Wow.
Isn't that insane?
Yeah, she's just a queen.
Coming out on the day she wants, October 13th, because
she's literally going to be like historic. She's a historic artist.
People are hyper fixating on her eyes, the way her nails are chipped, like everything.
Her nails are chipped?
Everything.
What about your nails?
They're also chipped.
Wow.
Why are you pointing that out?
Well, you said nails are chipped and it made me think about how you said earlier that your nails were chipped.
And she has her whole Easter egg thing that there's got to be a whole team behind her doing that because it's insane.
Unless she's a genius.
She does have a song called Mastermind and she says she's a mastermind.
There you go. Proof's in the pudding.
Anyways, I just think she's literally everywhere now. You can't get away from her. I am a little Swiftie.
Yeah.
I'm like a very low tier Swiftie because I'm a fan, but I'm a fan of her like I'm a fan of like other artists.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So.
Cool. Well, you have to, you're late for rehearsal, so you got to get up there.
I am.
Yeah.
Well,
ministry on ministry.
Thanks for joining us today for another Carpio Corner episode. Yeah.
Yeah. And if you want to share your experience and your testimony about how you've grown in your relationship with your father or how you're maybe struggling to do so, feel free to leave a comment below. And, we'll be praying for you in whatever way we can.
Yeah.
So God is faithful.
See you next time.
See you next time.